Welcome to our panel on progressing digital projects through proof of ROI. This panel will discuss how individuals and organisations can drive digital projects, how to get quick wins, and how to convince boards to invest during a period and in an industry where every penny counts. My name is Rob Jones, partner at B2B Connect, and I will be moderating this panel. Joining me are Dr. Hassan Albalawi, CEO and founder of Wakecap Technologies, Imad Itani, Innovation Manager at Alec, Ibrahim Atta-Apau, Director of Asset Management, BIM and Digital Engineering at Atkins, and Felipe Manzatucci, Director of Digitalisation at Skanska. I'll kick off with a question for Felipe, but also just to mention, please, we do encourage questions. You can find the questions, the question button next to the right of the video screen as you're watching. Q&A, click on that and you'll be able to type in your question. So Felipe, as a contractor, which I think is a good place to start for this discussion, is technology innovation a bit of a paradox for the industry? Because everybody wants it, but no contractor really wants to be the guinea pig when the stakes are too high from a productivity and a revenue level.
Thank you, Rob. It certainly is the case. It really is a paradox. And no one wants to be the guinea pig. No one wants to be the one that actually feels in a position to deploy technology firsthand. It is paradoxical. And a bit of context. I mean, contractors, we do work on very tight margins. So oftentimes you don't actually enjoy the luxury of having large R&D funds or capital to invest on deploying technology without really appreciating the risks or mitigating those risks before we deploy the technology. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't do it. It just means that we don't do it alone. So we really, as contractors, we work as a bridge between customers and the SMEs who actually have the intelligence and capability and the ideas of new technology ready to be deployed. We align that kind of ROI between the customer and that technology that's being presented. So we're very keen as contractors to actually deploy new technology. So I think how to solve this paradox really would be to actually move the early parts of product development into an environment where the risk can be mitigated, it can be understood before we translate that solution or that product into a deployable solution to a contract. I think that's how we can solve that paradox. But Rob, it certainly is a paradox, or at least it seems to be in the industry.
So that was very interesting. That Imad, Felipe there was talking about risk and managing risk and thinking about that risk. Is that something that comes up enough at the beginning during the procurement stage, where you start thinking about the potential technologies that could be used to keep a project, on budget, on time, etc., and how they'll be used? Are you also thinking at that point, and how do I manage the risk if I use these?
Certainly, Rob. So what happens is at the beginning of every project, we try to identify solutions that are specifically related to that project. We try to think about it in tender with the right teams, but it also all depends on the type of contract we have. If it's a lump sum, which is what happens in this part of the world, lots of the risk and even the benefits lies within the contractor. So the client expects you to take all of that risk. While in other parts of the world, I think they have different types of contracts, which allows more of profit sharing across that. But just to comment on what Felipe was saying, he's 100% right. Margins are very tight. You would like to do as much as you can. You want to try to test, but at the same time, you want to reduce your risks. That's where you need to have some sort of core or quick type of wins, which is things which you can benefit very quickly. And then some of the long-term initiatives, which we know that they will be beneficial, but in the long term, we try to put a separate budget for those, and we try to focus on them with more like the innovation teams. That's exactly why we have people like Felipe and myself in construction companies.
So when you're looking for quick wins, what sort of thing are you thinking about there?
I mean, a big part of our innovation section in our case is continuous improvement, the stuff which is tools, equipment, product stuff, which is very easy to prove. And then the benefit is actually within a month or 3 months. So it's things which is not debatable. Technology, sometimes you might have people, you have to sit down, you have to analyze, you need to do data, you have to prove to many, many parties. While some of the solutions in hand are very quick. You don't need lots of proving. You do some rough calculation, everyone is convinced. And once you accumulate some of these quick wins, then everyone is, that's what, as we do it with time, now people have more appetite to take risks, to spend more, and to try some of the long-term ones. So you need to balance between both.
So Hassan, I can see you nodding there, and obviously you're coming from the side of a technology provider. And
sure.
When Imad and I guess Felipe as well think about quick wins, that's something maybe that you're facing quite often, is companies want to see very quickly that comes through. And are you being asked that, and how are you then trying to actually show them the benefits?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. I totally agree. I mean, it's not only something that we basically hear, this is how we are surviving. This is how we are actually making our way through. First of all, we have identified, as Imad also mentioned, in this part of the world, and it's not that different from other regions, that the contractor, you need to win him first. You need to add value to the contractor. And when we're talking about the value, we need it to be quick within the same project and direct and undebatable. That's the only way to make it to or for a technology to make it to the field, to the site, because if we look at a project, and if we look at a technology that can benefit a company across multiple projects, in order to actually have this value, you might need to collect a lot of data. Forget it, this kind of technology won't be able to make it to the second project, because the first project needs a value, needs of course, they need to reduce their cost. They want to improve their bottom lines, and they want to touch these ROIs in order to basically continue working and taking more risks, or investing more technology, investing in trying new things. Because it's not about the technology, it's not about, because we have dealing with a technology which is only one part of the equation. We have the process, we have the people, and those, if you have a technology that add value but require a process change, that will make it also difficult. If you have to change the mindset, that's also difficult. That's why in Wakecap, what we are focused on is how can we improve the value, bring the value with zero change, because that's how we can get into the door. And what we found, that contractor, once they see the immediate value and they sit with you, this is where they take the benefit to levels that we never even imagined, because they started looking at the data and they say, okay, if we know this actually correlates with something else I'm thinking about. And they start building use cases that we didn't even, let's say, plan for at the first place.
Do you get those typical kinds of questions that you're asked in terms of benefits that you have to be able to explain, over this period, this is how you're going to, this is why you'll see a benefit, and they're expecting those, fairly quickly?
Sure, there are a few examples. So one of the things that we found that let's say add value to any site we go to is the amount of hours spent on the site. This is have been tackled either by manually having timekeepers to get the data, or installing let's say biometric devices to get the check-in and the checkout, which also stagger a lot of time. And when we implement Wakecap in a site, we show them exactly how many hours being delivered in daily basis, and those this mitigate the undelivered hours, which is basically the hours that you are paying for but you're not getting on the site. And then it takes them to a second level. It's like, okay, these hours are being spent, where exactly are they being spent? Is it in the working area or the non-working area? And they start asking questions. We turned out to be the technology that helps the management to understand where might be a problem, where the problem might be in. And then they take action that helps them and help the worker to basically improve their efficiency and reduce the I would say the hours spent per unit. And that has been proven in multiple sites just by monitoring where hours are being spent to improve the efficiency, the logistics. Another direct value we found was how many hoists do you need in a vertical building? So far, it has been just, estimates, but there is no way to measure exactly how many hours are lost or how can we optimize the amount of hoist we need in a specific area. Different phases might require a different number, and that's another use case that we were not planning for, but using the data we collect, the construction managers and directors were able to build these use cases.
Okay.
Rob, can I add to that, Rob? Because I think what Hassan is saying absolutely spot on. It's about proving value early on so that you can then get into bed with the contractors. Now, I think something I want to add on to that is the role that the contractor plays here. And it may be perceived that these technology partners are really developing great solutions, and there is a bit of a inability from the contractors to actually take them on board. I think what's important to understand here is the relationship that have to exist between the contractor and these technology partners. They have to be best friends. They have to work together. They have to work in unison to respond to the customer's needs. Customers in this industry, in this sector right now, are becoming a lot more savvy about how to deploy technology to help them meet their targets. And I think it's quite, we already see successful stories where technology partners and contractors partner up in order to find a solution, a specific solution to a customer. And I think that relationship is ever so important. So I think, and what Hassan is saying is terrific. It's engaging with the contractor early on to make sure that those benefits are translated to the ultimate client, which is in fact, the actual end user of that asset.
So Ibrahim, are you trying to be best friends with your technology providers, and does it to an extent depend on the technology? I mean, for instance, BIM, I know you're an expert in BIM, but BIM, it seems to be, it's pretty well standard now, but when we talk digital twins, certainly in the Middle East, there's not that many examples right now of them being used. So it's harder, I guess, to secure the investment for that.
Sure, thanks Rob. So I think it's obviously technology plays a huge factor, but I think it's just one factor. As Dr. Hassan mentioned earlier, there's the people aspect, there's the organization, the different roles in the supply chain, as well as the underlying processes. So the maturity, what we found is the maturity is often what drives adoption. And when the maturity is low, then you reach a situation as per what Felipe was talking about earlier. No one wants to be the guinea pig in experimenting a particular type of technology. So what we find is that ensuring that the whole ecosystem can benefit is where we see the most rapid adoption. And this, to look at how effective this works, it's often worth looking outside our own industry. If you look at the e-commerce industry or the banking industry, where technology is adopted quite rapidly, you see in those environments, they've got something which they call network effect. And essentially what that is that every party in the ecosystem benefits. There's a benefit for all actors, all players. And once we reach that position of everyone benefiting, that's where we see the adoption. So when we talk about BIM, BIM, I would say, it's been a long journey. The BIM journey in the region started 10 years ago, And it's only now that we're seeing BIM become standardized. And the reason for that is because you realize the benefits of something like BIM quite late in a project. Our projects are 18 months plus. Whereas identifying quick wins, identifying benefits that you can communicate at a much shorter timescale helps that adoption. So this is why you see technologies such as machine learning adopted very quickly, because we can quickly show tangible benefits to suppliers, to all parties in the supply chain. And I think we need to learn the lessons that we learned on our BIM journey in order for technologies such as digital twin, which will clearly be beneficial for multiple users across the supply chain. We need to be able to master how we communicate those benefits more early in the rollout and implementation.
And can I just ask, I mean, I guess this could be Felipe, well, this is probably a question for anybody actually, even including going back to risk. So I'll start with Felipe, and then maybe we move to Hassan as well, and then Imad. But going back to risk, how are you looking to share it? Because you're coming at these from different angles.
Yes, absolutely. And I think Ibrahim has said something there that it's just making me think really, really long and hard. He's talking about lessons learned of how we started introducing technology to the industry about 10, 15 years ago. And that is a lesson learned, and I can see we can take on. And what in specific that is that kind of gain share collaboration agreement. So distributing risk between the key parties involved in adoption of technology, that's where it's critical. So you get three key parties: you get the customer, you get the tech partner, and the contractor that bridges in between. Okay. Now, the distribution of risk has to be realistic, because if it was an equal distribution of risk, it would be at the detriment of those tech partners wanting and willing to come through and forth with new solutions, new ideas. As an industry, we desperately need tech partners and SMEs to come forth with solutions. Okay. Therefore, we play the role of saying, okay, we will take on the risk at a larger percentage than the others. Then the conversation is about, okay, what is a gain share then? If this solution, comes out to be, saves us, 6 months in program, who gets the gain, the biggest part of the gain share? And I think that ought to be the customer. So, and this is, going back to the paradox point, okay, so we capture the most risk, but we're not going to take the biggest gain share. Well, maybe not. Maybe that's not the role we play. So having these collaboration agreements very clearly identified, very clearly written and understood between all the parties that play a part in bringing technology into the industry, I think it's imperative on how to mitigate risk and how to manage it. And a very good point, Ibrahim, is a lesson that we have learned from the past.
And Hassan, you're coming from the other side. Yep. Do you agree?
Yeah, well, I think that, yeah, I do agree. But here's the thing. Well, the challenge that is finding those partners that, so if we consider the three stakeholders that Philip mentioned, customer, contractor, when I look at it as a tech provider, the customer for us, when we started talking to, for example, real estate developers, they said, as long as you make the contractor happy, if you save them money, we'll be happy. So focus on the contractor. That was like that kind of their indications. Like we are happy to implement technologies, but at the end of the day, as Imad mentioned, it's lump sum. So prove it to the contractor first. So we started looking for contractors who are willing to be, as Philip mentioned, partners who can help us, because we are not coming from the construction background. We are looking for that partners. And this is where I kind of, in my mind, when I talk to contractors, I try to sort them. Are they going to become a really good early adopters that I'm willing to give them discount and, you know, even put it at cost or even less, just invest on benefiting from them, and or basically just, I call them followers. So basically, I'm not willing to try, they're not willing to take the risk, but I know deep down is once they see, because their question was almost like, where did you try it before? They don't want to be again the, you know, the biggie here to try their to be the, let's say, to experiment on them, where I would say the company, which usually tend to be like really large multinational companies, they understand what you're talking about. They understand this kind of, they look at it as an opportunity. They will actually take you to basically start showing you around and start even selecting projects much more, I would say, wisely, in a sense of they even look within their companies for I would say an easier or improving the success by selecting to the team that you are working with, either the new generation, open mindset, willing to fail, they're okay to actually trying things and failing. And that's what we have been lucky with, to be working with leading contractors like CCC, B6, and others early on. They took that risk. That was, and we totally appreciate that kind of risk that allowed us to really get to where we are today.
So Imad, I mean, for you, again, you're on the other side to Hassan, or you're like Felipe. How are you looking at it? Because certainly in this region, the margins are very thin. So you can't. It must be very hard to convince people to take that risk.
I think there is a couple of things here. One is, I mean, in most of these cases, which we forgot to mention, is that there is no budget for these solutions. So in many of these cases, specifically like Hassan, I mean, we have lots of discussions with Hassan. You know, you're coming to a project and they have no budget to implement a solution in hand. Then you tell, okay, there's a couple of ideas here. You either go and invest for an intent to get the benefits later. And that's what people are worried about, is to invest in something which they don't know what the outcome is. And you know, there's a couple of technologies in here. Some technologies are intuitive. You know, immediately when you implement, when you test laser scanning, when you're talking some BIM tools, you know, so we've done so many solutions which are so intuitive. You implement, and the next day people are using it. Some solutions takes much more time. One is you need to invest a lot. Then you have to do the change management. You need to upgrade the teams. They need to start learning. They need to be used to it. They need to upgrade even their mind. They need to adapt. They need to change what they do before. And this is where the challenges are. So I think it's a lot between you know, looking what the technology is and what is available. I think one more thing which is very important is, in our case, we try to reduce the risk on all parties. Means as much as we can take the smallest pilot we can do, because we know that small companies cannot afford to lose a lot. Plus, at the same time, contractors also, because there is no budget, we try to see quickly if this thing has legs or not. And if it has potential benefits, we try to scale it. And if we don't think it's going to move on, we try to close it quickly so we don't lose much, all of us. We don't want to waste people's time. And we're not doing technology for the sake of marketing. We're trying to use technology to add value to our projects.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I definitely want to ask in a while, actually, is about the small business side. But before we do, Ibrahim, are you seeing a change in terms of where the drive for digitalization is coming from? Is it coming from certain functions within the supply chain, like client or contractor, or is it government? Is it government setting targets for the industry that means this just has to start to happen so that you drive this through?
Yeah, I think we've seen or witnessed a shift in the last few years. It's certainly something that I've observed. Whereas if you look at most countries, there was certainly a push down from client organizations and even mandates from governments. If you think of the sort of Dubai municipality BIM mandates, or mandates in the UK and other countries like Singapore. But what's interesting is now we've been through a lot of that journey, and really when it comes to digitalization, let's face it, in our industry, BIM was the main catalyst. That was the main digital transformation element that had an impact on us. And when we look at how that has the last 5 years have played out, we can see that the dynamic has shifted a bit, where contractors are now seeing the value and are now pulling the likes of smaller firms to support them and becoming more efficient, and realizing that they can use this for cost advantage purposes, bidding more competitively, winning more work. So I think now that the landscape is very much, the benefits are across the whole landscape, which is why we're seeing more of an adoption now, because design consultants like ourselves at Atkins, we see the need. In fact, it's imperative. Contractors are now adopting that attitude. So clients, when it reaches that point, no longer need to drive it. I think where the clients will need to drive it in order to get the benefits from the supply chain, and again, this is learning from the experience we had with BIM implementation, is having very, very clear outcomes right from the outset. Understanding, right, this is what we're doing, these are the outcomes, these are the benefits, so that it's almost like you're bringing all the actors on the transformation journey with you. Everyone's pulling in the same direction. A lesson learned from the implementation of BIM, for instance, was very much, we want this, away you go. And once you implement it in that fashion, there's resistance, and sometimes there's opportunistic behaviors that emerge from that. So to take that to one side, learn from it, understand the outcomes together, that will yield the better benefits and ensure that we see positive return on investment across the board.
Okay, I am going to ask about small business now, but before I do, just to flag again, if you have a question for the panel, please type it into the Q&A box and we'll get to it in a while. So Imad introduced the idea of small businesses and how do you start to work with the small businesses. Hassan, I guess you are in that small to medium size. When you have a company such as Alec or Skanska, what's the dilemma for you when you're trying to get your foot in the door? How do you have to go about that?
That's actually I would call it the $1 million question. But here is the thing. I'll share some of the experience that we have. We internally in Wakecap, we look for our hero within those companies. That hero is basically the one who can lead us to basically find the right approach, because every company is different. The decision-making process is different. We try to do a project success, or let's say a bottom-up approach, where we go to the project level, make them happy, but then we get maybe, we cannot make it to the head office for any other reason that is outside the hand of Wakecap. So all that to say, what we found there, like the best approach to do is to find your hero, usually find an ambassador that basically already the decision maker on those companies trust and they can basically listen to. That also helped. And I would say the optimal way that we found now is let the data speak for itself, let the use cases speak for themselves. And when we, because the thing is, when I come and present a technology to you, the way that we learned in how people think about it is, how does it benefit me? I need to present it in a way that he can actually imagine how it will help their company, and that's our approach. And speaking of Alec and Philip, I think we can just we're gonna talk to Imad if we need Alec, and we're pushing there. And for Philip, for Skanska, I think that's our heroes are already here.
Felipe, what about from your side? You're looking at small businesses. You're thinking, should I take that risk?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and I'm not just saying it because our good friend Hassan is here. Listen, I keep saying it, and I reiterate the point. Our customers are waking up to what technology can do for them. Okay, and we respond to our customers. So it is in our interest to welcome technology. It is in our interest to welcome consultants who drive that mindset, and we don't just mean it. We don't just say it. We actually mean it. We are now arranging ourselves in structuring our business to actually provide the foundations or the vehicle to enable this collaboration at product development level. So we're inviting our customers to tell us what's important to them. For example, what degree of occupancy percentage they get in their asset is important to them, right? How can we build in that technology in the assets that we build on their behalf? How can the FM system, the operations that we run ourselves, how can they already incorporate that? And how can our building teams, how can they deliver that as a solution? Now, all this thinking needs space, it needs time, it needs engagement with the Hassans of this world, the Ibrahims of this world to come in and tell us, well, this is the best way to deliver this to the customer. So, and that space, that environment of thinking is what we have noticed does not exist. So we are currently working on establishing that environment. It's an innovative mindset, it's an innovative culture that we want to ferment in our business, because we know it will lead to the development and therefore the adoption of technology that will help us respond to the customer's needs. I always start with the customer. If they're asking us for that solution, we will deliver it. But we cannot do it alone. And this is why in the past we've been saying, come on, Hassan, come in and tell us, what you do. Oh, it's too expensive. Oh, you haven't got an example of using this in infrastructure. Oh, I'll find 10,000 problems not to adopt that technology. And that's a wrong mindset. And we've looked really, long and hard inside, we are responsible for enabling technology being deployed to the industry. We are one of the key players to make it happen. And we take on that responsibility. So we welcome this, Rob.
Okay. Now, a question I asked earlier today, actually, in one of my previous panels, but I think it's appropriate for this panel as well, is, and I'll ask this to Ibrahim and Imad, is that we've all been hearing recently with COVID-19 that the adoption of technology in construction has ramped up, that it's got quicker. Do you think that as companies now have started to really see the proof of concept, that they've really started to see that it works, do you think it's going to start becoming easier to get investment for new ideas or new technologies and in the industry? Do you think the industry will start to become more willing to embrace them and to try them? So Imad and then Ibrahim.
Yes, I think, just jumping to what the guys were saying, Felipe, Hassan, and everyone, 2 to 3 years ago, the number of startups, technology companies in the construction was not a lot. Today, there is plenty of people trying to solve problems for our industry. And within for the same problem, you have lots of people trying to solve it. At the same time, companies like us and others have been playing a lot with different technology solutions. And we've got much more mature. We know what works, what doesn't work. So now we're much more comfortable to actually go and test and implement solutions like this. So I think no doubt with COVID coming as well, all of us jumping in no time, we all came on Teams, which was not Teams or Zoom or all these platforms, which none of us were comfortable to use before. People are starting to say that they start to believe that all of this is happening. So I think all of this drive coming together, the availability of technology companies, the maturity of construction companies, clients, and all of this, and the mindset change is all coming together to change the way we think about technology.
Ibrahim?
Yeah, I would agree with Imad that it's certainly accelerating the change of mindset, but we're not there yet. And I think Felipe hit the nail on the head actually when he talks about that collaborative nature. As an industry, we're not collaborative, and this is the reason why we struggle and we lag behind, because we're seeking that proof. Give me the proof first before I make the investment. And although COVID certainly will help in certain use case areas to overcome that, there's still a long way to go. So I think that collaboration, articulation of the outcomes, and involvement across consultants, contractors, the whole supply chain working together, that will be the catalyst that changes it. But certainly COVID will be a big factor. Just one point I'd like to also add is that obviously clients play their part in this as well. And there was one of the earlier conversations, one of the speakers that mentioned that we got to think about solving the solutions first before the technology. Solve the problem, solve the business problem, and that relates to the point that Felipe made. Let's look at the client's problem and let's see how we solve that with technology. I think once we can address that, it's easier to articulate the benefits, easy to define the outcomes. So this would be an approach that I would always push for.
Okay, so we're coming quite close to the end. So I'll ask this question to Hassan and Felipe, but if you could give me the two opposite sides in a way. If somebody was to come to you, Hassan, and say, I've got a pitch into a company, I need some tips, some help with what should I be thinking about to make sure that they listen to me and how and can get across why they should be investing. What would you be saying in terms of think about making sure you pass this type of information on? And then Felipe, I guess from the opposite side, which is what would you want to be hearing?
So just to make sure I understand the question, you're talking about as a tech provider?
Yeah, so exactly. So if somebody came to you and said, how did you do it? What sort of kind of bullet point tips would you give to somebody so that they could actually really prove and show why you should take on their technology?
Sure. I think I can summarize it with maybe with two major points. One was actually an advice I got from the CIO of CCC, Mr. Zuhair Haddad, who gave me the scope of the problem. He said, look, in construction, our problem is we cannot change. So try to bring us a solution that requires the minimal change that we can actually do. So if it's require no change, that would be ideal. We'd love to see it. We'd love to get that kind of solution. It will be faster. So that's the first focus they give us. And then the second one I got actually from Darren Bechtel, the founding partner for Brick and Mortar Venture, who basically I was trying to raise money and talking to investor at that time and having a pilot with CCC. So he said, stop what you're doing, go get me one successful pilot. Don't worry about the growth, don't worry about the expansion, just go and get a one success story, because in construction, the problems are shared. They are the same problem no matter where you go. If you got someone who basically, as Philip mentioned, and the others who understand your problem, who will come to you in, take care of this customer, and then others will come later. So those are the two main points I would leave them with.
Okay. Felipe?
Good point, Hassan, actually. This is what I would like to hear, Rob. I've written it. Hi, Felipe. Your water sector client wastes too much time and is inefficient in its asset maintenance operations. It could be 15% more efficient, and this is how. Then you not only I'm opening the door, I'm actually going to be marrying you, right? That because that demonstrates that you understand what's important to the customer, to my customer, and you understand how your product can help efficiencies of my client. So as Hassan says, the way in is a contractor, but we have to work together to say, okay, this product is going to go to that customer, and we know it's important to them. We know they're going to be funding it. We know we're gonna, and then you win because your product all of a sudden becomes a water sector standard, like the digital twins might end up becoming. So that's what I would like to hear, Rob.
Okay, well, I'm very impressed you wrote that down, because you had no idea I was going to ask you that question either.
No, I just
anyway, we're out of time. So thank you, everybody, it was a really interesting conversation, actually. And I'm glad that we really got to dive a little bit deeper into some aspects of technology and how to push the ROI of technology.